My final duty station in the U.S. Army was Fort Hood, Texas, back in 2004. Back then, Fort Hood was the home of the 3rd Armored Corps, 1st Cavalry Division, and the 4th Infantry Division, where I was privileged to command a battalion. Fort Hood can boast of being the world's largest military installation, and I can attest to that fact. I assumed command of the 2nd Battalion, 20th Field Artillery Regiment, MLRS, on the 6th of June, 2002. It was a special day because that was the 58th anniversary of D-Day, and the 4th Infantry Division had landed on Utah Beach on that famed day. Fort Hood was the first time that my family, Angela, Aubrey, and Austin, lived on a military base in housing. Now, the quarters were small, but the great thing was that our daughters had a ready-made group of friends who shared their interests. The kids would play into the wee hours, ride their bikes along the bike path, go over to the local shopette to pick up small necessities, or ride their bikes over to the Post Theater for that Saturday afternoon matinee. And I would always tell them to get there on time so they could sing the national anthem before the movie. We attended church there at the 4th Infantry Division Divisional Chapel, right across from the division headquarters. And it was there that we held our pre-deployment briefing for the families of the soldiers in the battalion before we departed for Iraq in 2003. That chapel was also the place where my daughter Aubrey, who was an altar girl, was chosen to serve then President George W. Bush Easter Communion in April of 2003. She was 10 years old. I was deployed to Iraq, but I got to see the pictures a little later. See, Fort Hood was a place of memories for us, and a military installation is a place where warriors can find respite with their families. We can enjoy weekend barbecues, flag football and basketball and softball games that allow us to have friendly competition between units. A military installation is home. Therefore, on November the 5th, 2009, when reports came of a shooting on Fort Hood, even having been retired for 5 years, it was personal. Our family was struck by this as we knew what it meant to have an entire installation on lockdown. Kids could not go out and play. Their normal routine of feeling safe and secure had been violated. And I was one of the first to state that this was a terrorist attack. And remember going on Fox News with Harris Faulkner. I was called an alarmist, but I knew something was not right. There were people who tried to dismiss this as a case of pre-PTSD for someone who they stated was concerned about being deployed into a combat zone. Then the truth came out. Sadly, political correctness even reared its ugly head when then Chief of Staff of the Army, General Casey, stated a greater concern for diversity being a casualty after this Fort Hood massacre. This was a terrorist attack at the one place where it should never have happened. Even worse, it was done by someone wearing the uniform and holding the rank of an Army major. This was not just a terrorist attack, it was also treason and betrayal at the highest level, far worse than Benedict Arnold. We came to find out that Major Malik Nidal Hasan had been in contact with now deceased terrorist Anwar al-Awlaki. We learned that there was a pattern of behavior, but some were told to not say anything during Major Hasan's tour at Walter Reed Army Hospital. Major Hasan stood upon a table and shouted, "Allahu Akbar," no different from the 9/11 terrorists, as he fired away and reloaded. On that day, which shall forever live in infamy for those at Fort Hood, 14 lost their lives and another 32 were wounded. There were the ceremonies attended by the president and the other top levels of Army leadership. There were the promises of aid and assistance. However, actions speak louder than words. The biggest betrayal came when the Fort Hood terrorist attack was officially classified in the after-action report as workplace violence. Now, as we draw close to the 4-year anniversary of this horrific attack, not to mention that Major Hasan has not been brought to trial, there is an even greater affront to the survivors. It has been declared that neither those who lost their lives nor the survivors will receive the Purple Heart because it could present an unfair situation for Major Hasan. See, the leadership of our United States Army, the Department of Defense, and the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces believe it is more important not to offend Major Hasan than to regard our men and women. They will not recognize what all Americans the world, and our enemies know. This was a jihadist attack on American soil, on a U.S. military installation conducted by that which is the worst amongst us, a traitor. This is no different from Sergeant Hasan of the 101st Airborne Division, who used grenades to kill American officers in a Kuwait base camp in 2003. See, this 21st century battlefield has no borders or boundaries for our men and women in uniform, be it Little Rock, Arkansas, or Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. We all need to send an email, make a phone call to Army Chief of Staff Raymond Odierno, Secretary of the Army John McHugh, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Martin Dempsey, Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel, and to President Obama. Ask them for whom do they serve and protect, and are they willing to lead our men and women on this battlefield of non-state, non-uniform belligerents who have no limits to their savage barbarianism. In closing, let me send these gentlemen a message from our past. The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by our nation. George Washington. So what's the message we're sending to our next generation of American warriors?